Jets receiver Terrelle Pryor got together with his former teammates on Tuesday, and he had some good moments, but he also had some bad moments on the day. Took some razzing from Washington defensive backs, had DJ Swearinger square up like he was going to punch him, made him flinch. But also, far more important than what any Washington players think of him, his head coach, Todd Bowles, not happy with Terrelle Pryor for talking about his injured ankle. Here's Bowles on Pryor.
Terrelle doesn't need to be descriptive, and I feel he should keep his mouth shut and leave the injuries to me.
As a coach, how do you handle it?
I've already handled it.
Did you get fined for that?
We had a conversation. We'll discuss our own in-house things in-house.
Look, I understand that coaches have a desire to keep as much injury information under wraps as possible. The idea is you don't want opponents to be able to draw a target on specific body parts so they can put a little sauce on an injured area or otherwise test it. That's the way that I've heard it described. You want to test it. That means you're going to hit him in that spot and see if they can continue to play. I still think that if a player has an injury, he should be allowed to talk about it. I don't have a problem with that, and I have a problem with coaches and organizations that try to muzzle players, because what happens is the player's not playing well. People are like, oh, he just stinks. And he can't say, no, actually, I'm injured. I remember there was a time when it was Antonio Cromartie with the Chargers. Turned out he had a fractured hip the whole season, but they told him not to talk about it. So, it just looked like he couldn't play anymore. And I just think it puts the players in a tough spot. And if they choose to talk about their injuries, they should be allowed to, although what they should be allowed to do and what they're actually allowed to do are two very different things. Because if the coach says it, it goes. Stats, you got a question.
Yeah, were you surprised that Todd Bowles told him to basically shut his mouth? I mean, that's just one of the strongest reactions from Bowles that we've heard, isn't it?
I think there's a real dichotomy between the way Todd Bowles is behind closed doors and the way he is publicly, and I think he's made the strategic decision that he's never going to show anything publicly. But this is a tough guy, scrappy guy, and I don't think he's afraid to get in a player's face if he needs to, not in a disrespectful way, but I think that he will say what needs to be said within the confines of a locker room or a meeting room, but he's not going to call guys out publicly, and this is the closest we've seen him come to doing it. It makes it clear he's not happy with it, and my guess is guys were told specifically, don't do it, and then Pryor did it anyway.
Why do you think Pryor did?
I think that he wants people to understand why there's a perception that he's not the guy that we thought he was going to be, and I think that last year was such a disappointment for Pryor. If we accept the fact that he was injured, that helps explain why this trajectory he was on after that 1 year in Cleveland, full-time as a receiver, he had such a great year. I expected 1,500 yards last year. What did he have? 300? Maybe not even 300 with Washington. All right, elsewhere in the AFC East, there was a lot of chatter yesterday from Tom Brady. He did a WEEI interview, and he spoke to reporters while he was on radio. He was asked whether or not, given all this talk of dysfunction between Brady and Coach Bill Belichick, the two men are still on the same page. Here's what Tom Brady had to say.
I think our priorities are, the same as they've always been, and I think that's why we get along so well. Is we're here to win, and like I said, it's been a very professional environment that he's created. I think I'm very lucky to be in that environment. I think he's the best coach that's ever coached in the NFL, and I feel very privileged to have kind of been mentored by him for as long as I have.
Look, I mean, that's what I would expect Tom Brady to say. There's still a clear sense that there's some sort of tension, that something's not right, that something is askew. Now's the time to put all that aside and focus upon their mutual goal of winning another championship. And that's the thing. Whatever differences they may have, whatever dysfunction could be looming. And let's face it, Tom Brady's under contract for only one more year beyond this season. When they adjusted his contract last week, they did not extend it. They just moved some money around. They added some incentives, but they did not commit to him beyond the year 2019. Who knows what's going to happen? We assume that the Patriots will want him for as long as he wants to play. And I think that assumption comes in large part from the fact that they moved on from Jimmy Garoppolo and kept Brady, but just because they kept Brady and traded Garoppolo last year doesn't mean that they're going to keep Brady until he's 45. Maybe there's a point between now and 45 where they decide, hey, Tom, it's time for us to move in a new direction. The Dolphins moving in a new direction as it relates to defensive tackle Gabe Wright. He was cut because he got into a fight with running back Kenyon Drake. Drake didn't have a helmet on. Gabe Wright threw an elbow at Drake when Drake didn't have a helmet on, grazed Drake with an elbow that connected in his back. A source called it uncalled for. Of course it is, but here's the reality. If it was a key player, do you really think that the guy would have been cut? If it was Ryan Tannehill, you think he's getting cut? If Ryan Tannehill goes after Kenyon Drake for making a mistake on the practice field and throws an elbow at his head, do you really think that Adam Gase is going to cut him? So it's that standard that always applies. Examples are made of the scrubs. Excuses are made for the stars. Gabe Wright's on the wrong side of that line, so he does something he shouldn't do, and he is out the door. We're going to be out the door for just a few minutes. When we return, some over-unders as the preseason continues and the regular season approaches. We'll be back with more Pro Football Talk Live on NBC Sports Radio and NBCSN right after this.